All right, imagine this for a second. You're 24 years old, you get fired from OpenAI, you sit down and write a viral 165-page manifesto about the future of artificial general intelligence. And then you use that exact same thesis to build one of the fastest-growing hedge funds on the planet. That's the totally wild, true story of Leopold Aschenbrenner. He has completely redefined how we should be looking at the whole artificial intelligence boom. And honestly, his strategy is probably the exact opposite of whatever your stockbroker is telling you right now. So welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right into it. To really understand why Wall Street is suddenly absolutely obsessed with Aschenbrenner, we've got to talk about these numbers, because they're just absurd. His hedge fund, Situational Awareness LP, launched with public equity positions of around $225 million in late 2024. Okay, fast forward to the end of 2025, just one single year later, and those disclosed positions had skyrocketed to $5.5 billion. We're talking about a fund that reportedly beat the S&P 500 by 47% in its first 6 months alone. It's just an unbelievable run of wealth creation. Okay, so let's dive right into this because this is where the story gets really, really interesting. If I asked you to build an AI portfolio today, what's your first move? You're probably buying Nvidia, right? Maybe throwing in some Microsoft, Google, or Broadcom. Well, in the fourth quarter of 2025, Aschenbrenner completely sold off his stakes in Nvidia, Broadcom, and TSMC. He literally dumped the market's absolute favorite AI darlings. So you've got to wonder, how on earth did he turn hundreds of millions into billions while literally walking away from the biggest chipmaker in the world? Well, he executed this massive pivot. He moved totally away from software and silicon and went all in on the physical world. Think back to the California gold rush of the 19th century, right? The folks who made the real, lasting fortunes, they usually weren't the ones out there digging for gold in the dirt. It was the people like Levi Strauss, the guys selling the jeans, the pickaxes, and the shovels to the miners. Aschenbrenner realized the market had already fully priced in the value of the GPUs. The easy money in chips was already gone. He realized he needed to be the one selling the shovels. See, Aschenbrenner's big light bulb moment was that while the rest of us are glued to our screens staring at algorithms and chatbots, AI's actual growth is bound by real-world physical things like dirt and electrons. You can design the most advanced AI chips in human history, but they need data centers. And those data centers need land, they need massive cooling systems, and above all else, they need an insane amount of electricity. Our existing power grid was built for human beings, for heating homes and running traditional factories. It was absolutely not built to handle the massive 24/7 power draw of millions of GPUs humming all at once. To really wrap your head around the scale of this power problem, you have to look at Aschenbrenner's orders of magnitude framework. Over just the past year, the ambitions of the AI industry have completely exploded. They started out planning $10 billion compute clusters. Sounds like a lot, right? But then, within months, that jumped to $100 billion clusters. And now, tech giants are actually sitting in boardrooms planning trillion-dollar clusters. Aschenbrenner points out that building megaclusters at that scale will literally require an appreciable fraction of the total U.S. electricity consumption. The sheer scale here just completely breaks traditional power infrastructure. So he took that terrifying macro thesis about energy and translated it into real investments, building this highly concentrated, high-risk, high-conviction portfolio. He wasn't out here buying safe, boring index funds. He bought the physical bottlenecks. In fact, a massive 20% of his U.S. equity exposure went into just one single company called Bloom Energy. He essentially went all in on a relatively obscure energy manufacturer before Wall Street even fully realized what was happening. So what exactly does Bloom Energy do to justify that kind of bet? They make solid-oxide fuel cells. Now, in plain English, think of these as modular, highly efficient power generators. They take natural gas and convert it directly into electricity. You don't plug these things into the local power grid, you install them right there, on site, next to your massive AI data center. They generate clean, reliable baseload electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For an AI lab that's absolutely desperate for power, this tech is a total game changer. And here's the real kicker: the speed to market advantage. This is exactly why Aschenbrenner made this his biggest bet. If an AI company wants to build a massive new data center today and connect it to the traditional US power grid, they are staring down a 3 to 5 year wait list. The grid is just heavily congested and buried in regulations. But with Bloom Energy's fuel cells, an AI lab can deploy power on site in roughly 90 days. He spotted this incredible shortcut months before anyone else did, scooping up the stock in the mid-20s right before it surged over 150%. Hitting the 290s by May of 2026. Now, securing independent power generation was a brilliant step one. But Aschenbrenner still needed way more land and more pre-existing heavy power infrastructure to house these massive trillion-dollar clusters. So he executed his next move, which is just brilliant and entirely counterintuitive. He started aggressively buying up struggling companies in a sector that most serious AI investors wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. He looked straight at the crypto market. He took these massive positions in companies like Core Scientific, Iron, and Cipher Mining. I mean, he bought nearly $1 billion worth of Core Scientific alone, giving him over a 9.4% ownership stake. But, and this is super crucial to understand, he was not betting on Bitcoin. The crypto market was sluggish, and honestly, he didn't care about their mining operations at all. What he realized was that these crypto companies were sitting on the exact two physical assets that every AI lab in the world was desperate for: vast amounts of land and massive active power substations. To put it in perspective, and there's this fantastic analogy from the sources, buying these Bitcoin miners is exactly like buying a failing dive bar just so you can take their liquor license. It's brilliantly simple. Aschenbrenner bought into these companies strictly to get their physical real estate and their pre-approved heavy-duty grid access rights. If you try getting those permits from scratch today, it takes years. By buying the miners, he bypassed the regulatory wait times completely. He essentially stripped out the crypto operations and positioned these massive sites to be repurposed as dedicated, ready-to-go AI data centers. Moving a bit further down the physical supply chain, you actually have to figure out how to connect all these GPUs together. When you're trying to build a cluster of 1 million GPUs, you can't just run standard copper wire between them. It's way too slow and generates way too much heat. You literally need photonics, lasers. So Aschenbrenner bought heavily into Lumentum, a company providing the critical optical laser equipment necessary for high-speed data transfer. He also bought SanDisk to solve the memory wall, securing the massive, reliable storage required so that data isn't lost during multi-month AI training runs. On top of all this infrastructure, he made some really aggressive, polarized bets on the broader economic shift. On the long side, he bought massive call options in Intel. Now, Wall Street largely hated Intel, but Aschenbrenner views AGI as a national security issue. His bet is that the US government will heavily subsidize domestic chip manufacturing to avoid relying on foreign supply chains, basically a nationalization of AI progress. And on the flip side, his only major short position was against Infosys, a massive Indian IT outsourcing firm. The logic makes total sense. Why outsource coding to human labor when AI coding agents like Claude Code can do it faster and cheaper? So what does this all mean for us, and how can we learn from it? Well, here is what we can call Aschenbrenner's AGI realism playbook. First, build a macro thesis. Don't just screen for random stocks. You've got to figure out the shape of the future first. Second, go upstream. When everyone is rushing to buy the gold miner, go buy the shovel manufacturer. Third, obsess over physical constraints in the real world, stuff like land, power, and permits. And finally, use options for asymmetric bets, limiting your downside while keeping your upside virtually uncapped, exactly like he did with that Intel play. Ultimately, Aschenbrenner proved that the easiest way to completely miss the AI revolution is to only stare at the software. The real, defining battles of the next decade are going to be fought over power plants, real estate, and fiber optic cables. If AGI is truly coming, it's going to require an industrial mobilization unlike anything we have seen since the 1940s. So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder as you look at your own portfolios. The AI revolution won't be built with code alone. Who is powering your future?